Hey folks, and welcome to the R&D Diesel channel. Today we're working on my 1988 Jeep Comanche, and we're going to be actually building a trailer light wiring harness for this thing, and I'll show you why. Now, unless you got the factory trailer option, a lot of these Jeeps don't necessarily have a good trailer wiring harness connector on it, and so my thought was to try and build my own. Now, there's this little electrical connector that is underneath the truck on the back side of it, and my thought was this is what connects the tail lights to everything in the front towards the cab. But I don't necessarily want to cut into these old wires. I want to kind of keep them in their original condition. So my thought was to build a wiring harness connector that just splices in place of these two connectors and then has a little tap off for the trailer light wiring. And so that's what we're going to do today. Now, one of the hardest parts is actually finding these little wiring connectors. You can find them online if you do a lot of digging, but it ends up being like well over $100 for these parts. So what I have to do was just go to the junkyard and find a set of connectors just like this that I cut off, and then that way I have both the male and female side so we can splice into here. Now, of course, it's very challenging to find a Jeep Comanche that's in the junkyard to find this exact wiring connector. So I actually did some prying around and found out that I could get this exact wiring connector off of like a 1995, 1996, I think it was a GMC Jimmy or Trailblazer, something like that, or like a little S10 from that era. I actually found the wiring connector. If you're on the whatever Jeep or GMC or S10 in the junkyard, it's gonna be right around this area, kind of on the driver's side by the firewall. And so this just nice. It was like $5 at the junkyard. Also got one of these little 4-flat to 4-flat extension cables that I can cut up and use to tap into these wires that I've got so that we can make that trailer light wiring. Alright, so show you guys how I'm figuring out where all these wires go. I've got my multimeter hooked up, set on 0 to 12 volts. My ground wire here is hooked up just to the regular ground on the truck, and so now I can test and see which one of these is active. So right now we've got the left blinker on as an example. And what I'm going to do is touch this to, I've been touching it to one of the wires, and you can see this thing's oscillating between 0 and 12 volts because the blinker's going off and on. And also, because I have the other end of the wiring harness connected up, just plugged in, a little sketchy with all these wires. You definitely don't want to touch these together, the wrong ones, or you'll short it out. But check this out. We can turn on the left blinker. So you can see that right up top there. Left blinker is on. I disconnect the wires, and the blinker's off. And so just by doing that, I figure out which one is the left blinker, the right blinker, and which one's the brakes, and which one's the running lights as well for this thing. And then we'll just have to grab one more that's ground, and with that, we can create a wiring harness. Alright, so now I've taken some notes on exactly where all the wires go on the electrical wiring connector. Next thing to do is to go ahead and start cutting the wires and modifying it. So got this little jumper, I'm going to cut it in half. And if you're wondering which side to use, make sure you use the female side on the vehicle. Alright, so now I've got all the wires figured out where I need to go. So now what we have to do is actually start splicing in the trailer wiring connector. Now this is where things get kind of weird, is because what I'm trying to do here is basically add in a third line, and so that's why I'm teeing it in like you see here. Took this connector and made it like a back-to-back like you see here, and so either end of this will plug into the existing wiring harness on the truck. Now, of course, any of the wires that we're not using, any of the 4 that we don't connect, we'll have to just jumper those all together, but that should be it. Alright, got that guy done. And now we move on to the next one. Now, normally what you'd want to do is you'd want to cover these connections in some heat shrink tubing, but that's not really practical because I'm making kind of a weird teed connection like this. So what I'm going to do is come back here with electrical tape. Won't be ideal, but that's what we'll have to do in order to protect these little electrical connections, make sure they don't short out. Cool, got all the wires connected, and you can see them all right here where I've teed in the electrical connector. Now for the rest of the wires, I'm just gonna jumper the colors right back together, you know, red to red and all that jazz, so that we don't interfere with the rest of the wires if any of them aren't being used. Now with the rest of these electrical connections, I only have a single one-way splice to do, so I am also going to be using some heat shrink tubing. Just got to make sure you don't forget to put that on. Well, went ahead and wrapped everything in electrical tape, probably an exorbitant amount. Doesn't look like the prettiest thing in the world, but it should get the job done. Now, next thing is plug this guy in, see if it works, but I'll probably wait until I don't need the truck immediately in case I pop a fuse. Alright, well, didn't want to hook up the trailer all the way just to demonstrate this, but as you can see, we've got the left turn signal going, and it corresponds with the back. Hit the brakes. Yeah, you can see there's the brake lights working on both sides. It's also getting indicated that the trailer lights are working. So there you guys have it. Little brake light connector works. And, you know, of course, I don't exactly know how the wiring is for this trailer. It seems kind of strange, but nonetheless, you guys can see that it does indeed work, and you can see it just plugged in right there into the original connector. Well, anyways, folks, that does it for today's video. Hope you all enjoyed it, and hopefully this helps you out if you've got an old Jeep Comanche. Thanks for watching.